Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be tearing down an AWHP 95 Trackhawk transmission to get ready to build for the Hellcat station wagon. And you may ask, why do I need to build a transmission for this car? Because I already have the stock AWHP 95 from a Trackhawk in this car with the rest of the all-wheel drivetrain from a Trackhawk. Well, for now, the car is going to make around 1,000 all-wheel horsepower, and it shouldn't be an issue because this car is lighter. The transmissions usually hold around 1,000 to 1,100 with no issues. Plus, the car is a lot lighter than a Trackhawk. But the issue where I'm going to need to have a built transmission and transfer case is I'm going to really quickly, after this thing runs and drives, and I get it tested and shake it down and make sure we're not going to have any suspension issues or any other issues, we're going to be putting a built 426 in the car with a bigger supercharger, twin turbos, should be making around 1,500 to 1,600 wheel horsepower, all-wheel horsepower. So I have had this spare Trackhawk transmission over here, and it seems like it's okay. It came out of a car that was on fire, but how it was on fire, it doesn't look like it has very much damage other than it, some plastic melted on it. It has a little bit of soot on it. But for the most part, when I pulled the transfer case, you can see everything's nice and clean. The seals aren't melted. When I pulled the torque converter, the seals back there aren't an issue. So I have this other burnt, I think it's an AWHP 70 or 75 out of a Grand Cherokee SRT with a 6.4. And you can see this one got a lot hotter where it melted the case and it started bubbling the aluminum. And there's a bunch of spots that are broken. That's not a usable transmission, but I think this one is going to be perfectly fine for a built transmission. So I think all the internals are fine. The car had, I believe, 3,000 miles. So let's get this thing apart. Never pulled one of these apart, but I'm usually pretty good at pulling things apart. So we'll get the torque converter out of here. We'll get this section. It's like a little transfer case section. And we'll just start, flip it over, pull the pan, get everything out of it, and then just kind of go from there. I want to assess to see if any of this is going to be an issue where the plastic melted. There's no issues with the aluminum casting, because if there is, the case obviously isn't going to work. Also back here, you can see it didn't get very hot because that plastic plug for the transmission isn't melted. So I don't think this transmission got very hot because it was underneath the car. The issue with that Grand Cherokee SRT is the SRT rolled over and then it burnt. So the transmission was pretty much on the top and the flames were just like engulfing it. I think what happened with this Trackhawk was I think somebody did insurance fraud. They threw something inside the car, it burnt the inside of the car and burnt the rest of the car, but everything underneath seemed like it was pretty okay, other than the engine. So the differential and all the axles and all that other stuff was perfectly fine as well. So let's get this thing apart and see how she looks inside. The transmission is now 100% apart, and it looked really, really good, besides a few flaws from the fire. So, unfortunately, there is some case melting issue right here, and there's a bubble right there. I'm guessing it's not that critical because that's all below where the oil pan would bolt, but at the same time, I'm not really comfortable trusting this case on the Charger when I turn it up to 1500 horsepower. So I don't want to have to worry about launching it and, you know, splitting a case in half or something weird happening where I drive this thing halfway across the country, go to a race, launch it, break the case in half, can't find another transmission because these are pretty hard to find, and then I have to figure out how to tow the Charger all the way back across the country with me. So what I'm going to end up doing with this, because it still is a good tranny, I'm going to find a transmission shop with the parts washer. It's like a dishwasher for transmissions. Have them run this in there, get it all nice and clean, clean everything else up. Everything else looked really, really good. I'm not sure if this is how these look, but it might be some staining from the heat and the oil from the transmission. But I'm going to pull this all apart. This actually takes a tool where you press this down, then you pull the snap ring out, and then all of the frictions and all that stuff inside of it you pull out and go through. But I don't think there's going to be that big of an issue. I think if I go through this transmission, all brand new seals, all brand new gaskets, you know, I could sell this thing for around $5,000. This is a $10,000 transmission if it's a perfect transmission. So go through this. I went through the oil pump and all this stuff over here. The valve body looks great. The oil pump looks great. And all of this friction material looks almost brand new. It doesn't look like it has, you know, I think this thing had 3,000 miles on it. It just looks like it's been sitting. You can see the crosshatch in there still. And all the frictions and bands, oh, not bands because this doesn't have any bands, but all the frictions look great. I think it's a really good idea to not just be like, let's junk this transmission, because these are very hard to find, and I could save it for another project later down the road. These are a good upgrade for the 8HP 75s, which come in the Grand Cherokee SRTs. Anything with the 6.4 that's all-wheel drive, this is a massive upgrade for that. But at the same time, I don't trust it at 1500 horsepower. I'd probably trust this thing up to 1,000, but 15 is a lot of power to go through a drivetrain automatic. It makes a lot of heat, a lot of torque, etc. So we'll figure out what's going to happen with this. I need to go by a few transmission shops later today and see if they'll actually do like a cleaning on this without doing a full rebuild, because sometimes it's hard to find transmission shops that will do that kind of stuff. But we'll do that. I'm sure they have the tool to press this. I'll have them pull a snap ring. Then I could go through it. I have cleaning stuff here that I can get all this perfectly cleaned up, ready to go. And then I'll order, I'm not sure if I'm going to order new bands, or new frictions, but if the kit comes with them, I'm just going to put them in the transmission, refresh this thing all the way, make it nice and clean, ready to go. The one transmission I'm not going to try to redo is this one up here. But this one up here, I think all of the drum and all the shaft and everything else is good to go and usable. So I might pull all that stuff apart and just have it and list it, because transmission shops kind of can't find some of this stuff because it's very rare. It's not like a normal Charger V6 automatic transmission. These things, there aren't very many of them out there. So let's get everything kind of buttoned up today, figure out what I'm going to do with the transmission shop. I need to call a few places, and I'm really happy that everything actually is pretty decent. I mean, for how burnt the Trackhawk was, you know, I wasn't expecting the case to be like it was. I thought I was going to be 100% in the clear with the case until I found that bubbling, which means it got way too hot. It started to melt the aluminum and started to bubble. So let's clean all this mess up. I'm not exactly sure why that leaked off. I'm guessing it's because I have smaller wheels on the table than in the back, but after I jacked it up, it worked perfectly. It drained through the center, and we'll just kind of go from. So unfortunately, the transmission is usable, but not usable for the Hellcat station wagon. So I'm gonna look tonight, but I think that you can order brand new cases by themselves from Dodge. I think they're only like a couple grand, and I might end up doing that so I could have a case for a built transmission, because all the other stuff is gonna be not Dodge parts. There's gonna be a lot of stuff that's coming out that's billet, and I'm gonna end up doing that so it can hold the power. But for the transmission, like I said, I want to rebuild it and refresh it because it is still a usable case, a usable transmission. I also tomorrow want to come over here and get the front differential and the transfer case torn down, because tonight I'm going to try to find a transmission shop that will clean that case. And I also want them to clean these two cases, which at that point I'm probably going to tear down this transmission so I can get rid of this case, because this one is the one that is really, really melted and broken and all kinds of stuff, just so I could get it off of this shelf, because there isn't very many parts inside of it. The torque converter is probably not good. It probably got too hot. It might be good. I think both of them, from that and the Trackhawk, they don't look bad, but I would kind of be, I don't know, I might throw them online as like maybes and just say that they got too hot, or not too hot, but they were in a vehicle that was in a fire, and I have no clue. The fluid in them looks good, but besides that, I just want to get some of this stuff out of here and just cleaned up, because I could tear this transmission down, keep all the parts up here, and I could have pretty much everything on this one pallet instead of having a transmission up here, transmission on the ground, etc. So I'm going to end the video here. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to have a good transmission to build for the Hellcat station wagon, but it's still a good transmission. I just need to go through it and refresh everything. So, gonna end the video here. If you like these videos, make sure to click that subscribe button, throw a thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.